Fintech Chatter Podcast, brought to you by Tier 1 People, the leaders in executive search for Fintech ventures.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the podcast show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host Dexter Cousins, and do I have a special episode for you. Today's guest is Paul Weingarth, CEO and co-founder of Slyp. Founded in Sydney in 2016 by Paul and Spiro Rokos, Slyp is a global company supported by Australia's 4 major banks. Their journey began with a simple idea: transforming paper receipts into a digital format. This innovation laid the groundwork for what Slyp is today, a company dedicated to making life easier for people and helping brands connect more meaningfully with their customers. I chat to Paul about the launch of their new platform, which is already delivering great results to customers only 6 weeks in. What makes today's show so special is Paul's personal transformation in tandem with Slyp's journey. Paul has been an early supporter of Fintech Chatter, and as guest number 9, we've since become good friends. It was only 12 months ago I had a catch-up with Paul, where Slyp and his personal health were on the line. It's been inspiring to watch Paul transform himself and lead the transformation of Slyp in tandem. And I'm really grateful to Paul for being so vulnerable and sharing his personal journey with you all. Before I speak to Paul, if you're new to the show, make sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcast player. And if you're coming back, thanks so much for your support.
It is fantastic to be here again. Love to see you.
Third time on the show. I think the very first one was April 2020. You just made a huge announcement at a time where I think we were all in lockdown and wondering what the world was going to be. But look, before we kind of talk and reminisce, tell me a little bit about Slyp and your role at the business.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Dexter, we were very fortunate to get capital and investment from strategic investors, being the big 4 major banks. So NAB, Westpac, ANZ and CBA.
Are you still today the only Aussie fintech to?
I believe so, yeah. So, we're on a mission to help connect retailers with their customers through a variety of channels, and the bank channel is one of them. But really at the core of what we do at Slyp, it's all about taking retailers' point of sale data or receipt level data and connecting that receipt data to a payment and to a customer to deliver a whole range of different value propositions to enrich that payment experience for the customer and to bring retailers and their customers closer together to build those first-party customer relationships. So in a nutshell, we have a little over a nice glass of wine. One about 5 years ago when I was in San Francisco, I came up with this one-liner of what we do. Ultimately, what we do is we connect SKU to who. So we connect SKU level receipt data to who the customer is, and then we enrich that moment, that transaction moment, with digital receipts, with loyalty rewards, and a bunch of other data and insight capability, again, to bring retailers and their customers closer together, and also by connecting the SKU to the who, to the customer, what's in the basket, not just how much they've paid where, but what they've purchased. We could add a whole new dimension to that commerce ecosystem, because we can actually start to bring in, and this is what we're starting to do now, which we'll cover no doubt later, is we can bring in the suppliers of those retailers into the ecosystem, because we know what brands those customers are purchasing. So this is a really fundamental shift in adding a new dimension into that commerce ecosystem. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome. Now, we are going to talk about that in a bit more depth, because I think it's a really poignant kind of journey, not just personal, but from a business perspective as well. Because if I kind of cast my mind back to when Slyp first hit the scene, it was kind of part of that, what I call that Fintech 1.0 movement, where it was, hey, we're digitizing receipts. To hear you now talk about this thing that's way bigger, right, broader and ambitious, I think is kind of really, it's a perfect example of how Fintech in Australia has had to grow up very, very quickly. And at the same time, despite there being so many challenges around things like funding and, just the market itself, have had to get bold and ambitious at a time when, maybe it's when we should have been bold and ambitious, was when there was zero interest rates. So I can't wait to talk to you more about that. But before we do, maybe if you just tell us a little bit about kind of some of the customers that you've worked with, the size of the organization, where you're at now, just to give our listeners a little bit of an idea around the scale of the kind of Slyp in the business.
Sure. So we act as Switzerland in the middle, and we sit at the intersection of payments, retail tech, and fintech. Effectively, bring that, enriching that transaction moment to bring retailers and their customers closer together. As I mentioned earlier, that can happen in a variety of channels, whether it be the banking app, whether it be the merchant's own app, whether it be our new app that we've developed on behalf of our retailers and their customers called Go Rewards, which we'll talk about later, no doubt. Really, if you think about where we started, it was always around, building a digital receipt standard that could be taken Australia-wide and obviously offshore as well. But our focus is very much on our home ground here in Australia. And part of what we've had to develop over the last 8 years it's been now feels like a little bit longer than that, because there's always battles that you need to go through on this journey. But you have your highs and your lows, no doubt. But really, where we focused initially was building the right infrastructure to be able to connect into the variety. There's several point of sale systems that retailers use, and those point of sale systems have traditionally held the keys to the kingdom when it comes to accessing receipt level data in a structured real-time format. So we spent years building that infrastructure and those pipes into those point of sale systems. And then our first proposition, and our leading proposition, was all about getting that data out of there to enable digital receipts, to get rid of paper. There's 10.6 billion paper receipts every year in Australia, and we've made a dent in that, but there's a long way to go. And I suppose we wanted to create a really seamless, frictionless experience for customers around digital receipting by linking the digital receipt to the payment card and ultimately displaying that to the customer without having to check out and add that friction at checkout, I should say. We've processed billions of transactions. We work with the largest retailers in the country, your Kmart's, all the way through to your big fashion houses like Country Road Group, pharmacy chains, so from fashion to pharmacy, Chemist Warehouse, so some really big category leaders that have leveraged our point of sale and data capability to enrich the transaction moment through receipts. But now we're evolving, and the grand plan was always to start with digital receipts. But if you go back to our very, very first pitch deck, it was all about unlocking even more value beyond receipts. Receipts were always our landing pad, and connecting that SKU and who to first deliver a good hygiene, a digital receipt, better experience. But now it's about how do we actually help customers, particularly in a time like now where everyone's doing it tough, not just consumers. With the cost of living challenges out there, but also retailers.
Yeah.
We're seeing yesterday, we saw another retailer going to receive ship. It feels like every month, and they need to get better and more sophisticated at engaging with their customers and nurturing those customer relationships. So
yeah, it's interesting you mention that, because I think this has been there's been warning signals of that for a long time. If you think of the outsourcing of just something simple like the takeaway delivery.
Yes.
You don't have that data, right? Uber has it,
That's right.
has it, whoever.
That's right.
And they get to capitalize on that and profit from that.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that we see that, as you aggregate, like an Uber Eats, for example, or any of those order ahead platforms or delivery platforms, or most aggregation platforms, solve a really big customer problem, which is an ecosystem of merchants all under one roof in one app and a consistent, seamless experience. The challenge for those smaller guys and even the mid-market and the larger enterprise guys is they actually get disintermediated from their customer. So while it's great for the customer in providing that utility of aggregation, the challenge is, and they've got a great marketplace there of customers or pool of customers Uber do, or the aggregator apps do to connect with merchants. merchants don't know who that customer is. And so one of the things we want to do is with our next product that we've just released, is enable customers to get what they need and have the great experience around utility of aggregation, but without the disintermediation of the customer and that end retailer.
Well, look, I'm burning to talk about the new product because you and I had a conversation about it a year ago. And I think kind of, it was, I got the sense that it was, hey, we need to do something different, but we're not sure what. Is it AI? Is it this? Is it that? And you kind of, you start to kind of get drawn into where the money's going and where the buzz is.
Yeah.
So to be sitting here with you now, to not only be talking about, oh, we're launching it, but we've launched it. We've had massive success already with our flagship customer. And then hear you talking about the actual premise and what it does is really, I think it's reassuring, right? That you've kind of, you were able to take, at a time where there's so much noise and you're getting pushed and pulled in so many directions, to have the clarity to go, this is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you've talked all about data. You haven't mentioned AI once.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation you and I had about back, you were even saying to me, are you going to do something in AI? And I'm like, we were all like, well, I tried crypto, maybe I should do.
That's it. Yeah. No, it's been a wild journey. And I think one of the things, we've built a lot of trust with hundreds of, some of the retailers I've mentioned before, we've got hundreds of retailers on our platform that trust us with their data. And that's been fundamental to us being able to get the traction that we've had with leading retailers all the way down to small, medium-sized businesses as well. And I think one of the things that became really clear to us was this need for those retailers to build direct relationships with their customers. Why is that? One is they need to be way more efficient in how they acquire customers, but also retain and grow that customer. And for us, we were listening to this, and some of our first retailer, Superbarn, that's gone live 8 weeks ago, they already had a loyalty platform, but it just was not up to scratch. It was built probably in the early 2000s, hadn't done a lot of maintenance. It was from an existing system and provider that wasn't really a core focused around loyalty, and definitely wasn't built in the era of AI, that's for sure. So we listened to and we heard from a bunch of our retailers. It was kind of a serendipitous moment where all these different retailers saying, hey, what are you guys doing around loyalty? Which you've got all of our receipt level data. Can you help us connect with the customer and build us an app to connect with that end customer and build us a loyalty platform that delivers out of the box personalization using the SKU and the who data to deliver customers relevant content? Can you deliver us a platform that unlocks the ability for our suppliers who supply us to connect with their customers and help us fund some of the value propositions and incentives to keep our customers shopping with us? But importantly, it's not about polluting that end shopper with just spray and pray deals. It's about getting really personalized content to that shopper. And I think the beauty of AI and machine learning now is that there's a lot of this stuff that you can pull off the shelf. You've got to build all the great capability and utility around that to drive great customer experiences and make it really technically simple for retailers to turn this stuff on, because they are really busy. And it's got to be super efficient and feasible and commercially viable as well. So we listen to that, and our retailers come into us saying, we need help. Can you help us? We trust you. And then we said, okay, wave your magic wand. What do you want? And it was, turnkey solution, out of the box, personalization, first-party relationships. We need to know who our customer is. We need to feed that information into our marketing automation platform so we can talk to that customer. And so we said, okay, that's great. We'll take some of that and then let us go and speak to your customers. So I stood out the front of stores, my design team, my product team, giving out vouchers and getting to interviewing customers and asking them, hey, wave your magic wand, customer. What do you like about this program you see today at the store? What if you could wave your magic wand, what would you change? And there are a couple of things that we heard, and we did research, quantitative research. We did a lot of research and design thinking on this. The key.
So you personally did the research?
I did that with my team. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been out in the store signing people up to the app, but you have to be out there in the front line.
Amazing.
And it gives me energy. Like we had a customer the other day that came out and I signed her up. She did one shop at our first merchant super bar, and she signed up to the app in less than a minute. Did a shop, scanned a card, and she had a $20 voucher sitting in there for her next shop. She's like, that would have taken her, she said that would have taken her about 9 months to get that one $20 voucher. She got off her first shop. And that was because we brought the suppliers in. So she bought products that were on member bonus that was funded. So it might have been a $10 cashback or a $20 cashback, or even a combination of $2 cashbacks. Thousands of SKUs through the store had member bonus. One shop, she got a $20 voucher, which would have taken, as I mentioned, months and months to get. And she literally was like skipping out of the store. She was so happy with herself. And that, for me, feeds the beast.
So if you'd have interviewed me, I would have said, I'm sick of having to scan my flipping flybys every time.
Yes.
I'm in my wallet.
Right. That's what we heard.
Yeah.
So there's the other thing, just to close that out. First thing was, I want it to be of value, because there's a simple equation we heard actually when it comes to loyalty and rewarding customers and driving stickiness, which is value that the customer gets minus the friction to get that value equals engagement and equals stickiness, right? So you could have a program that might be, again, like just fictitiously 10 points per dollar and really high friction, you get low engagement. You could have a program that has 1 point per dollar and little to no friction, and you get really high engagement. So what we heard from customers was, we want one app and we want one tap, right? We don't want to sign up to every single loyalty program, don't have all these siloed agreements and relationships that have different methods to access those programs. We want it consistent. We want it uniform. We want it aggregated in one app, and we also want it connected to our payment as well. We don't want to have loyalty cards for all these different apps. So that's something that's coming soon in our platform. But one app was really, really key. And be able to also, around privacy, that was one of the other key things that we heard from customers, which was we don't want to have to go to all these different channels to unsubscribe or resubscribe from programs. We want one channel to be able to manage, remote control our privacy. So we've built it AI first, privacy first, mobile first. It's really, really fundamental. And that's what we heard from customers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of take you back again a year, right? Because the conversation that we had was very different to the one that we're having today. And I've got to say, as somebody who, I consider myself a friend, I walked away and I was a little bit worried about you, and I was a bit worried about Slyp. Now, for those who aren't watching the video, I'm sitting in front of a Hollywood star, right? You look amazing.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
A year back, you were looking more like me than you were looking like it. But, not only were you kind of in bad shape, kind of physically and health-wise, but, kind of Slyp was at a precarious kind of moment as well. You were, making changes like everybody else had to around kind of reducing numbers of staff. What did the future look like? And, I came away, and I always feel great and energized when I talk. And I came away that day worried about you, and hey, I hope it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation, I think, about 3 months later, and you told me about the idea that you've got for the platform. And I was like, he's back. Right? He's back. And I genuinely was, and I think I would have said to you, this is an amazing idea. Do it. And it's, I want you to share that journey, right? Because I can't put into words the transformation that not only kind of a personal transformation, but also a company transformation, and how, that they've been in tandem, right? Like, and it's stellar. Like, I mean, it is an absolute transformation.
Thank you.
How on earth did you get from that point to kind of today in it's 12 months exactly?
Yeah.
Right. When we had that conversation.
Firstly, thank you very much. It's very kind of you. They're very kind words. And you're right. It has been a very challenging year. Like early last year, we had some projects that didn't go our way. The market, the capital markets were in free fall as well. The good times, it was cloudy, it was rainy for the macro, but also for us, we weren't immune. And for me personally, it was really challenging. I, very stressed.
Yeah.
Looking at how do I, you've got investors coming at you, staff going, hey, where are we at? What are we doing here? How do we evolve? You have retailers, your partners, pressuring you all the time to be better. And, your personal life too. Everything gets impacted, and then for me, I had things like inflammation. I wasn't sleeping well. I was stressed. I had inflammation through my body. I was overweight and I didn't feel like I was heavy on my feet, and that also ultimately translates into your mind. So I had probably a week where I've always been an eternal optimist.
Yeah.
It's been part of my DNA, probably irrationally optimistic sometimes, but I try to keep the rational brain intact and mind intact. But for me, when things don't go your way, and this is the one thing most founders or anyone that's in a startup can probably relate to, is that there are so many highs and so many lows all within a given hour, a given day, or a given month. And the highs are never as high as they probably should be, or they feel like they are, and the lows are never as low as they feel like they are as well. And being able to regulate that and maintain your energy levels as much as possible is absolutely critical. So for me, when I had some pretty tough lows, you've got two options in life, and this is my view, is you can either navigate and find a solution, or you can be a victim and say, why me? How did this happen? This didn't go my way. Find all the excuses. And I reckon I had for the first time in my life, about a week of being the victim.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you got to pull yourself out of this. You got to pull yourself out of this for yourself, for your investors, for your partners, and most importantly for the team as well. So where do you start? Like, I suppose for me, and the other thing is there's no instant gratification. There's no quick fix.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to roll again and you're going to go harder and smarter and learn from some of the things that you didn't go your way, either in your control or out of your control, take ownership of them and navigate. And so for me, that started with transforming my health.
Yeah.
My physical, which led into my mental, which led into my happiness and my energy, which then unlocked my creativity, which then transpires. Your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So it transpires into the team, into your customers. And so, and one of the things I sort of set off when I started this transformational journey 12 months ago was I want to measure all the data, because I'm very data driven.
Yeah.
So I basically wanted to pull it back into micro wins rather than like it's a big mountain to climb physically, mentally, spiritually as well. There's definitely some soul searching that goes on, but I want to build some new muscles in how I think about the journey, how I think about my health, putting myself first, making sure I carve out time. I don't put any meetings in before 9:30 these days, unless it's an overseas call once in a while. I make sure I prioritize my physical health, because that unlocks my mental health, which, as I say, unlocks my energy, creativity, and my all-round happiness. And so part of doing that, setting mini goals every week and every month, but also now doing my first triathlon next week as well, which is like, if I thought I was going to be doing a triathlon 12 months ago, it's a biggie. It's the news to try.
Yeah.
So a little bit nervous about that, but I'm going to, continue on this journey, because, it becomes part of life. I've been working on the physical, working out pretty much every morning for the last year. Doing meditation is really important as well, to clear your mind and to sort of de-stress. I'm very fortunate. I live down in Bondi, so I'm down at Bondi Icebergs Gym. I can have a sauna and a swim in the beautiful ocean. Rain, hail or shine, I'm down there, and I think one of the biggest things that's been my shift as embracing being uncomfortable, particularly in the physical. And I think as we get, I'm in my early 40s now, you kind of, you have all the good things in life around you and you get very comfortable, and you lose that ability to like really lean in and get uncomfortable and get out of your comfort zone and embrace that, switch your mindset around that. So that's been a massive thing. And I think I shared with you, when you're on the treadmill and you feel like giving up, or you're, doing some physical exercise and you think you've reached your limit, there's probably another 40 or 50% to go that you can give. And it's not to say do this every day, but it's like, what is that trigger in your mind to say, no, you know what, I'm going to go harder.
Yeah.
And I'm going to raise the bar even more. So, beast mode's been something that I taught to myself about. Beast mode.
Yeah.
And it's, as I say, like beast mode starts in the gym in the morning, and then transpires into, when I walk in and see the team and talk to customers and meet with our investors and, think about creatively about solving complex problems and identifying opportunities, getting out and talking to people. Again, your energy and your vibe is everything. People want to gravitate to that warm, exciting, buzzy energy, and opportunities just, come off the back of that. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's something I've actually, had conversations with myself about as well, right? Is that you got to get out your comfort zone, right? Kind of where you're being challenged, right?
Yeah.
Kind of step out.
Yeah. It's a muscle. It's a muscle, right? It's literally, I reckon I neglected that muscle being too comfortable for a good decade.
Yeah.
And caught myself on it. And I was like, that's kind of where it started, which was get comfortable, be uncomfortable, embrace those little 1%ers that you don't want to do. Go and do them, because that actually drives a sense of satisfaction, purpose, energy, and you're building this new muscle. And then, you get those micro wins going, and then the macro wins start firing off the back.
I think it's one of the kind of seductions of going and starting your own business, being a founder, is you think that you're always doing that just because you've taken that risk. Whereas if you transport yourself back to the times when you were dreaming about being a founder or a business owner, having your own show, like you were breaking it, right? That's why you weren't doing it. And then you plucked up the courage to go, right, I'm finally doing it.
Yeah.
That only lasts for so long, right? You can't kind of live off forever off that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, the fuel light was on. It was empty. And, it couldn't have come empty at a worse time. And as I say, there wasn't enough time to feel sorry for yourself or to play victim. It was, how do I navigate? And for me, it literally started by walking down to Bondi Icebergs, doing a workout, running on the treadmill. I've dropped just over 25 kilograms.
Incredible.
In 12 months. Yeah. And that first run hurt a lot. Even though I used to be, a track runner back in my glory days at university and high school, I hadn't really pushed myself that hard, and just started by walking and into running, and then into, pretty high performance training. So
awesome.
My advice to anyone who's, got their challenges is like lean into that uncomfortable, just chip away at it, start small, and, get those little mini wins, because they'll turn into massive wins pretty quickly. 3 months is all it takes to you completely can transform yourself.
Yeah. Awesome. Now there's another challenge that's facing a lot of founders, people in the, in the fintech industry, and that is navigating partnerships with big four banks. You're the expert. You only want to do it with all four. What would be your kind of advice, guidance to people who either are developing a product where they're going to need to, it's to serve a big four bank, or they're right in the midst of it and they've got a partnership and they're kind of hitting roadblocks, so it's not getting the traction that everybody hoped it would, because the big four banks are going into this with good intent as well, right? Like they want to make it work, but there's just unforeseen challenges. What kind of tips could you share with people?
Oh wow, that's a big question.
And remember, we can't edit this, right? So if you say something,
that's a massive question, and there are a heap of learnings that I'd love to share. I think, how do I unpack that? Firstly, my advice would be to any fintech out there that has a sole distribution strategy or concentrated distribution strategy, to enable that through their bank partners, big four banks or even second tier banks, is to rethink that strategy, because the speed that you want to work out as a fintech or a startup, scale up, is going to be worlds apart to the reality of how the banks, the machines of the banks work. And when banks take a long time to do things, to innovate, there's also risk and exposure of, changing of their strategy, changing of stakeholders, key stakeholders within those organizations that shift their strategy and don't want to inherit the old strategy, want to go on their own path and what have you. So definitely have it as a secondary distribution strategy. Don't have it as a primary distribution strategy. I think the other probably key thing, and again, we could sit here for another half an hour and talk about this. But everyone's got great intentions, and as you mentioned, the banks want to innovate, but the machine of the bank isn't conducive to doing that at a pace that aligns to a scale up or a startup. But I suppose one of the other key points would be make sure that if you are solving a problem for that bank or that partner, it is a big problem and it is tightly aligned to their core business and is right on strategy, core strategy, not innovation strategy or innovation candy. And also be very, very careful of doing proof of concepts or pilots, because going from a proof of concept or pilot into production is, daylight away from each other. So, things like, we've seen, for example, all the scams that are happening in, off the back of COVID and the hacking and the, feels like I get about 20 calls a day from some form of spammer and the phishing emails and all these types of things. That's a huge problem in financial services, and that's not going away. So that would be one where I would say, you know what, we have a really good solve here. Let's go really hard at it and focus on that. But also manage your pipeline. So you start with something small, prove it in market, and then you got your land strategy and then your expand strategy, but you work on both of them in unison. So focusing, one, don't have it as a sole distribution strategy. It's going to end in tears. Two, focus on real problems that are core to the business. And three, have like a multi-pronged sort of pipeline approach to that as well. It's been a big learning for us. And as you mentioned, the banks want to innovate. They want to invest in the ecosystem, which is fantastic. The speed at which they can move and innovate is the major challenge.
Looking to the future now, like what can we expect from Slyp in the next 12 months?
Well, we are incredibly excited about how we've sort of evolved the business. And
I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
I'm just on the sidelines cheering.
Yeah. So it's funny. You mentioned how different we are today, but we're actually, our vision and our strategy, our go-to-market strategy has evolved, definitely. But if you go back to our very first pitch deck when we were doing our angel round, this is the moment right now that we're actually realizing our vision. So
a very good friend of mine and client, and he was actually on the podcast saying this. One of the very first that I did, but he came up with a line that I've just lived religiously by and shared with everybody. He said, I've got a 10-year vision and a 90 days plan. That's kind of how I operate.
Yeah, you got to win.
So you're 9 years now. That 10-year vision is. Yeah,
that's it. You got to win today to unlock tomorrow.
Yeah,
and you've got to have the grand plan, but how you get there is going to be very different. How we're getting there, we're not there yet, right? We're getting there, and I'm really excited. Like next year's a big year for us. But to answer your question more specifically, we mentioned earlier the Go Rewards platform, which is our loyalty platform that we've just launched with our first retailer. The results speak for themselves. We had some incredible metrics that have really satisfies us for the business. For Superbarn as our first retailer, one of our existing digital receipts providers. We've got hundreds more retailers on our platform that we want to take Go Rewards to. We've already signed 3 more since we've launched, so plenty more news to come on that shortly. We see, again, connecting SKU and Who, loyalty rewards is going to be a fundamental focus for us, particularly in this moment in time where customers are doing it tough, retailers are doing it tough. Retailers want to bring their suppliers into that ecosystem. So by connecting SKU and Who, we can enable a whole new dimension to that commerce ecosystem. Banks are also a really interesting spot as well. So our bank partners, There's a lot of noise at the moment around the commoditization and regulation around payments, retail or merchant payments. And obviously there's a lot of innovation that's happening around pay to and what have you in that space. I think this next 12 months is going to be incredibly interesting to watch what happens with regulation in payments. They're talking about removing surcharging from some cards in the retail landscape. What does that do? How does that shift traditional rewards models where you've got issuers or card issuers providing points to their customers? The margins to fund those points are going to continue to, there's going to continue to be downward pressure on that. So I think there's going to have to be a shift in how rewards and loyalty within the payments ecosystem operates. That's the opportunity we see with Go Rewards and being able to bring suppliers into that ecosystem, because merchants, they are literally doing it tough. Yeah. Banks are looking for ways to reward their customers for being loyal with them and shopping at their merchants as well. But there's one stakeholder that's not in this picture yet, and that's the suppliers, the CPG brands, your Nestle's, your Sony's, Samsung's, all these different suppliers that don't have an end customer but are super thirsty to engage with that customer through non-traditional channels. The only way they do that today is by advertising on social media or on TV or in-store. Being able to, retail media is a massive hotspot, and by connecting SKU to Who, we feel like we've got a really interesting right to play and to unlock that opportunity with the ecosystem to bring it all together.
Yeah, this is now becoming really clear that we're kind of moving, I don't even want to call it Fintech 2.0 now, but I think we're talking about Fintech 3.0, right? Which is, if you look at that first iteration, it was regulatory arbitrage. It was making a clip on the ticket on the way through, doing something slightly more efficient. Maybe it's doing it slightly cheaper, but everything was just arbitrage. It was like the early days of online advertising where you're just doing advertising arbitrage. Remember those? You'd click on a website and it was just literally a list of ads.
That's right.
It's kind of like, that's how I look at that early version of fintech. Then we've gone the super app, which I think is kind of, I wouldn't say it's had its time. I think they're doing a great job. But now it's kind of that ownership model of where Grab or Uber Eats owns everything.
Yeah,
it's being disintermediated again.
Absolutely.
And I think this is now where the value chain is getting totally chopped up.
You look at it, you look at it with, I think Afterpay have announced a partnership in retail media. So they're getting involved in retail media. Some of the biggest US banks are getting involved in retail media. The holy grail of retail media is not just connecting retailers with their end customer through a financial services product, but it's their suppliers. And that's what I've been sort of alluding to. And you can only do that when you have the basket, the SKU level data connected to the payment. And that's been our vision from day one. And it's really exciting to know that we've survived to this point and the market's finally moving to where we were hoping it was going to move to. You've got coming from the side of that is like being able to get hyper personalized using AI and machine learning. So letting the machines do the work to curate content that is hyper relevant to end consumers. You've got the changing in the funding model as well, as I mentioned, with suppliers. So it's a perfect storm brewing right now. And then you've got the disruption and the downward pressure on payments in general and the margins in payments, but the data that sits around the payments, where the juicy piece is, where the meat around the payments bone sits. And so, it's already starting locally and offshore, but I think this is the next sort of really big thing in payments and bringing together, loyalty, rewards, and retail media all bundled in around the payment is fundamental.
Yeah, and it extends way out between retail products, right?
Yeah,
you got services. I think you and I, both mentioned built in the US, which is focused on actually helping people buy a house, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Insane.
Yeah,
it's really, really interesting. I think crypto is in an interesting spot as well. I've seen some interesting use cases outside of rewards and loyalty, but around lending. I think there's some interesting use cases where traditional cryptos trying to find, it's been a great asset class and some people have made some very good money off it, but how does that how does that translate into the everyday life of consumers? So there's some really interesting Australian innovators that are doing interesting capability, enabling people to leverage their Bitcoin asset as a way to secure a loan and lending through smart contracts that way. So I think there's going to be more use cases coming from crypto and how that actually you get more utility out of that asset if you own Bitcoin and other different cryptos. So that's really interesting. I'm seeing that emerge as well.
So I think I agree. I think that's kind of really where, and certainly my kind of, the people that I respect in that space, I think, they've been talking about tokenization of real world assets for the last 18 months. And look, is this the use case? And I think that's that is definitely one to watch.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think I was listening to the founder of Lightning Rails, which basically trying to create retail payments or merchant payments using a crypto. The challenge they had, and these are over in the US, these guys, and the challenge they had was that it's very hard to displace the incumbents because, you can use your credit, you get 2 or 3%. The merchant pays 2 or 3%, so they're not as heavily regulated over here with their interchange rates. Merchant pays 2 or 3%. Most of that either goes to the card network, or some of it goes to the card network, most of it goes to the card issuer, and then chunk of that goes to the customer in free wines, flights, lounge access, all that sort of stuff. So while merchants wanted to accept crypto because it's low to no cost and, they don't wear any risk around fraud or what have you, or bad actors on the network, they, would solve a big problem. There wouldn't be a merchant in the world that doesn't want to take zero cost payments or near zero cost payments. The challenge is customers are on a drug they can't get off, and the banks and the ecosystem.
I think the other issue for it as well, Paul, is we kind of live in this, bubble ecosystem, but 98% of people on the street, like you mentioned crypto, first word they'll say is scam.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the trust element that I think that's, kind of really that adoption is the biggest challenge that it faces. And I think it's kind of, that's the hurdle it has to overcome. Mate, we're coming to a wrap, but before we do, obviously really inspiring story, both personally and business-wise. Other than Fintech Chatter, of course, like what podcasts do you listen to? Like where do you go to get inspiration and, kind of education and ideas?
Yeah. The one for me outside Fintech Chatter, which I love, that's my favorite. I mean that. It just gives me, I love, you've had so many great guests on this program and you always take little snippets from each of them and learnings on how they think about people.
Because I get exactly the same thing from everyone.
It really is powerful stuff what you do for the community and for founders like myself. So thank you for that. I think for me, like if I want to balance, because I can't be always on just thinking about fintech and retail tech and payments and all of that. So if I want to sort of zen out a little bit, I love The Diver CEO by Stephen Bartlett. I think, again, given the sort of soul searching and health, physical, mental journey I've been on over the last 12 months and trying to really give myself the right toolkit to continue to get uncomfortable, get out of my comfort zone and to perform better at every angle in my life. I think Stephen Bartlett on Diver CEO has a really, really good cross-section of guests. Some of the guests have different opinions on different things, so it's good to critically analyse that. But it's a mix of health, wellness, mental, physical, business. So for me, that's something that I really listen to.
One of his early episodes with the ex-CEO, co-founder of Monzo.
Yes, He had the Klarna founder on that as well. He's had a few. He's had quite a few. I've listened to most of them. So, and I think he also has a really soothing voice, just like yourself, Dexter.
He does, I just don't spruik athletic greens or what's the thing?
Whoop. Whoop. Yeah, he's got his finger in a few pies, but he's he's only young and he's quite inspirational and he's very vulnerable. He's very honest. Which I love. I think everyone can appreciate vulnerability is not easy, and hopefully I've been a little bit vulnerable today, and I think it's always endearing and that's how you actually connect with people, is being who you really are and being authentic.
I think it's how you inspire people as well, right? You know, I think one of the, you know, you came up with your line, you know, for Slyp, and I think the line for my podcast is, look, it's ordinary people doing some extraordinary things, right? And that's the reality it is, right? Like, it's like, you know, you get people who you would be talking in the schoolyard as a parent and just, you know, not thinking anything of it, and then, you know, you kind of see them in the AFR and they're doing up, right? And I think that's the, you know, the reality is, right? Like, and there's a quote from Oscar Wilde, the great English writer, which is, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Yeah. And I kind of love that, right? It's like, look, we are, right? Like, we all suffer from the same emotions, feelings, right? Like, regardless of what your position is, regardless of, you know, what privileges you've had in life, we all have to deal with the same emotions, fears, right? Like, challenges. We all have to deal with death. We all have to deal with sickness, right? We all have to deal with those things. And I think that's a kind of great leveler for everybody.
100%. That's, it's, I mean, we're getting deep now, but it's good. Like, I think, you know, through this last sort of 12 plus months in my journey, connecting with, you know, nature has been really, really important. Realizing how insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. We're just these little specks.
It's nothing like looking at the ocean for me. And
getting down there for the sunrise or the sunset. Like, practicing that gratitude every single day has been incredibly important for perspective and to, you know, to effectively unlock the energy to continue to chip away and navigate through challenging times.
Awesome. Now, where can people find out more about Slyp platform?
Slyp platform. So, slyp.com.au, refreshed slyp.com.au website is now live after a couple of weeks ago. I think we launched that. You'll also have our new loyalty platform called Go Rewards. So, Go Rewards, all one word, .com.au. And of course on LinkedIn. Myself, look me up, or our Slyp business page.
Awesome. Paul, great to have you on again. A fantastic story, and can't wait to see, you know, what happens this next 12 months.
Thank you for having me, Dex. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for tuning in, folks. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure to check out our back catalogue of over 300 interviews with great fintech leaders just like Paul. If you are new to the show, make sure you follow us on your favourite podcast player. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. If you did enjoy the show, make sure to share it on your socials. It really helps promote great businesses like Slyp and great Aussie founders like Paul. Until the next episode, keep well. Fintech Chatter is brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you find world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.